when my daughter-in-law said, "You either start watching the twins full-time, or you'll need to find somewhere else to live," I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I didn't even blink. I looked her square in the eye, gave a small nod, and turned away. No words. Just a quiet shift in the air. Then I walked down the hallway, past the baby gate, past the pile of laundry she'd left in the middle of the stairs, and into the guest room that had been mine for the last 3 years. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked around at the space I once thought of as a temporary stop. It had slowly turned into something else. Now, it was just a place I didn't belong. I pulled my suitcase from under the bed, the same one I'd used when I moved in after my husband passed. I didn't pack right away. I just let the quiet settle around me. You'd think that moment would feel heavy, maybe even sad. But it didn't. It felt clean, like fresh air after a long storm. Brittany didn't follow me. She'd said what she came to say, and I suppose she figured I'd either cave in or sulk around for a few days until I apologized for not being their unpaid babysitter. Stanley, my son, he didn't say a word during that exchange, just stood by the kitchen island, looking down at his phone like he hadn't heard a thing. I didn't raise a son to be spineless, but I guess I blinked and missed it. It's funny. You imagine the hardest part about aging will be your body slowing down, losing people, forgetting names. But no one tells you it'll be watching the very people you sacrificed everything for look right through you like you're a piece of furniture. 3 years ago, I moved from Oak Ridge to Beckford after Dennis. My husband of 47 years lost his battle with pancreatic cancer. I'd sold our house, gave away half our furniture, and packed up what little was left of the life we'd built. I came here because Stanley said they needed help with the twins, and I needed family. It felt like the right thing to do at the time. They had just bought the house. Brittany had gone back to work after maternity leave, and Stanley was traveling for his job. The plan was simple. I'd help out with the babies during the transition. Maybe 6 months. A year, tops. Then I'd get my own little apartment nearby. But like a lot of things in life, that plan drifted. It started small. A load of laundry here. Watching the boys for an hour so Brittany could rest. Then Stanley's work trips got longer. Brittany's meetings ran late. I didn't mind, not at first. I loved those boys more than anything. I still do. But soon enough, a little help turned into full-time responsibility. Diaper changes, bottle feeds, nap schedules. I was in my 70s and pulling 12-hour shifts with toddlers while their parents sat in home offices with the doors closed. There was no thank you, no offer to hire part-time, help, just assumptions. Quiet ones, the kind that sneak in and settle down like unwelcome guests. And when I finally spoke up, said I needed some space, that I couldn't keep doing this without a break, it turned into a problem. The real turning point came 2 weeks ago when I told Brittany I'd made plans to go on a weekend church quilting trip. Just 3 days. Nothing fancy. I'd already found a local girl from church who was happy to help out with the twins while I was gone. But Brittany crossed her arms, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "We didn't agree to outside help in this house. If you're not watching them, we'll have to figure out a new arrangement." I thought she was bluffing. That brings us to today. This morning, I told them again I was still going on that quilting trip. I reminded them about the girl I'd arranged to help. I said it as calm as could be. I even offered to pay her myself. And that's when Brittany dropped the ultimatum. Like I was some stranger mooching off them. Like I wasn't the one who'd been buying groceries, covering the boys' clothes, paying off the credit card when Brittany forgot her balance again. Like I hadn't paused my life, what was left of it, to be there. So now I sit here, the sun dipping behind the curtains, suitcase on the bed, deciding which pair of slacks to take. I'm not angry. That surprises me. What I feel is something closer to peace. Maybe it's because this isn't the first time I've had to stand up for myself, even if it's been a while. Maybe it's because I'm finally waking up from a long sleep. Or maybe it's because deep down, I knew this was coming. They expected me to cry, to fight, to backpedal like always. Not this time. I stood up, folded my Sunday dress, and placed it neatly on top of my slacks. I grabbed my reading glasses, my devotionals, and a small photo of Dennis from our 40th anniversary trip to Bar Harbor. I slid it into the front pocket of my suitcase, right next to my Bible and a tin of mints I always carry but never eat. From down the hallway, I could hear the twins giggling in the bathtub. Brittany's voice rose over the running water. Stanley was probably still on his phone, pretending the house wasn't splitting at the seams. I zipped up my bag. They don't know it yet, but things are about to get very quiet around here. And not the peaceful kind. As I carried my suitcase to the front door, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. I didn't see a burden. I saw a woman who gave everything and finally decided she'd given enough. They said I had to choose. So I did. And the moment I walked out of that house, I felt lighter than I had in years. I didn't go far that night, just a short drive across town, to a little place called Willow Bend Motor Lodge. It's nothing fancy, one-story, gravel lot, a buzzing soda machine near the ice maker, but the sheets were clean, and the front desk gal called me Ms. McCann like I mattered. That was enough for now. I'd left without much of a word. No note, no door slam, just gone. And to understand why, you'd have to back up a bit, because this didn't start with one argument. This had been building for a while. When I first moved in with Stanley and Brittany, I came with 2 suitcases and a slow, aching grief. Dennis had only been gone 4 months. The house felt too empty. I wasn't sleeping. Stanley called one night out of the blue, said, "Mom, we could really use an extra pair of hands. It might be good for all of us." I thought maybe it would be. The twins had just turned 2, big-eyed boys with sticky fingers and crooked little smiles. They wore me out, but they also made me laugh again. At first, I was happy to help. Mornings were filled with bottles and cartoons. I'd clean up breakfast, wipe down the counters, start laundry, fold what I could, and rock the boys down for their naps while Brittany took calls in her office with the doors shut tight. It was supposed to be temporary. I didn't mind pitching in while they adjusted to working parents. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being a helper and became the help. It wasn't just the babies. It was everything. Brittany would ask, "Hey, Shannon, since you're already up, could you throw in a load of towels?" Or, "Can you run to the store? We're low on almond milk and those pouches the twins like." Or, "Can you take care of lunch today? I've got back-to-back Zoom calls." Always polite, always smiling, but always assuming. What started as a little help turned into an all-day routine. I'd be up with the boys by 7, cooking oatmeal, wiping noses, scrubbing yogurt off the high chair straps. I'd do dishes, prep snacks, fold tiny clothes, load the dishwasher again. Brittany stayed in her office, popping out only to remind me the twins couldn't have juice past 3 p.m. Stanley would roll in from work, nod at me, and scroll through his phone while I tried to clean up spaghetti off the floor before it dried like glue. Nobody said thank you. Not once. I told myself they were just busy, that they were young parents, overwhelmed, that I was helping because I loved them, but loving someone shouldn't feel like being invisible. One afternoon, I was dragging in 3 bags of groceries, trying not to drop a carton of eggs. My back was tight, my knees sore. Brittany was sprawled out on the couch, scrolling her laptop, a half-eaten bowl of cereal on the table in front of her. "Did you get the organic squeeze packs?" she asked, not even looking up. I said I did. Paid for them myself, too, because they were out of the cheaper brand. Again, later that day, I walked into the living room and found Stanley with his shoes on the coffee table, sipping one of my Diet Dr. Peppers like it was his. "You seen the mail?" he asked. No greeting. No eye contact. I handed it to him, then looked around the room I once helped decorate when they moved in. My quilted wall hanging was gone, replaced by some mass-printed canvas about live, laugh, love. The family photos didn't include a single one of me. I was in that house, but I wasn't part of it. The final straw came the week before the quilting trip. I'd circled it on my calendar in red. 3 days in the mountains with the church ladies, sharing stories, stitching blankets, eating pie. I hadn't had a break in years. I told Brittany over breakfast. She put down her mug and blinked at me like I'd just suggested she swim across the Atlantic. "Wait, what do you mean you're going out of town? Who's going to watch the twins?" "I found someone," I said. "A girl from church. She's CPR certified and has references." Brittany stared at me. "We don't want strangers watching our kids," she said flatly. "You live here. You're part of this family. Can't you reschedule?" "No," I said. "I need this." She pursed her lips, stood up, and walked off without another word. That night, Stanley barely spoke to me. I heard them whispering in the kitchen after the boys went to bed. Doors closed. Voices rose. My name mentioned more than once. I didn't ask what was said. I already knew. When I woke up the next morning, I was getting the twins dressed when Brittany came into the nursery. She crossed her arms. "You either start watching the twins full-time," she said, "or you'll need to find somewhere else to live." There it was. The ultimatum. No, can we talk? No, we're feeling overwhelmed. Just a line drawn in the sand. And Stanley? He was leaning in the doorway, sipping coffee, staring out the window like he wasn't even in the room. Like I was someone they'd hired off Craigslist and forgot to pay. That night, I didn't make dinner. I didn't fold laundry. I didn't clean up the toys scattered across the living room. I showered, brushed my teeth, and got into bed fully dressed. I laid there staring at the ceiling, suitcase already packed and standing by the door. And I thought to myself, this is what it feels like to outlive your usefulness. Not because you've lost your value, but because someone else has stopped seeing it. The motel room wasn't anything special, but it was clean. 2 beds, floral curtains, and a chipped table near the window. It smelled like lemon cleaner and quiet. I set my suitcase down and sat on the edge of the bed. That moment, I let out a long breath I didn't know I'd been holding for years. I stared at the key in my hand. A real key, not one of those plastic cards. Heavy metal, with a tag that said room 12. It felt strange to hold something that's small and feels so much peace. This wasn't home, but wasn't their house either. That night, I didn't make anyone dinner. I didn't clean up after anyone. I didn't fold laundry or refill diaper bags. I microwaved some soup, kicked off my shoes, and watched the local news in silence. Nobody asked me to do anything. Nobody needed anything. It was just me and the stillness. The next morning, I walked to the corner diner for breakfast. I sat alone in a booth and drank a full cup of coffee while it was still hot. The waitress called me Han and asked if I wanted extra butter on my toast. I nearly cried over scrambled eggs. Not because they were good, but because I ate them sitting down. After breakfast, I pulled out my notebook and wrote a list of things I needed to do. Not for them, for me. First up, the bank. I headed down to the credit union and asked to speak with someone about my account. I'd set up all kinds of automatic payments when I moved in with Stanley and Brittany. I took care of the water bill, the electric, even the cable for a while. Back then, I told myself it was to help them get on their feet. Young families struggle. That's what mothers do, support their kids. But now, Cancel all auto payments to 782 Linden Street. I told the clerk. She looked at me over her glasses. Are you sure? Completely. Next stop was the credit card company. Brittany had been an authorized user on my main account. I let her add herself a year ago when she forgot her wallet too many times in a row. I figured it was easier than transferring money around. Remove her name, I told the agent. Effective immediately. Then I called the grocery delivery app. I'd been paying for their monthly plan. Took care of every grocery order for the past 9 months, right down to their almond milk and snack packs. Cancel it, I said. I won't be covering it anymore. I made one final call to the daycare center Brittany used for drop-ins. Once or twice a week, she'd have meetings she couldn't reschedule. I covered those fees without her asking. Told the receptionist it was a gift. I was proud to help. But now, no more charges to my account, I said. They'll need to update their payment method. By noon, I'd made 6 calls. With each one, I felt lighter. Not angry. Not spiteful. Just clear. Focused. Free. Back at the motel, I pulled out a yellow folder I'd brought with me. Inside were notes and receipts I'd kept since moving in. I flipped through them slowly. The numbers added up quickly. $38,000 toward their down payment. Stanley had asked for a short-term loan so they could close quickly. I never asked for it back. $7,500 on nursery furniture, 2 matching cribs, dressers, changing tables. $4,200 for fencing their backyard after they worried about the boys running into the road. $3,800 in groceries over 3 years. All of it added up to a whole lot more than I could explain in one sentence. But the part that stung the most, I never threw it in their faces. I never once said, "You owe me." I just did it, because that's what love looked like to me. Quiet giving. Turns out, I was financing my own disrespect. That phrase landed hard. I said it out loud just to hear it. I finance my own disrespect. If you've ever done everything for people who stopped saying thank you and then walked away quietly like I did, don't just sit there. Like this video. Share it. And for heaven's sake, subscribe. If you've made it this far and still haven't clicked that button, I have to ask, why? Go ahead and tell me in the comments. I grabbed a pen and wrote it on the inside cover of my notebook. Not out of spite, not to keep score, but to remind myself what happens when you keep giving to people who stop seeing you. I didn't tell Stanley or Brittany I was cutting off the accounts. I figured they'd find out when the bills came due. By the second day at the motel, I'd settled into a new rhythm. I made my own breakfast. I read a book cover to cover. I walked downtown without pushing a stroller or carrying a diaper bag. I visited the library and picked up a copy of Boundaries the librarian recommended. That night, I called my friend Patty from church. She was shocked to hear from me. "I thought you were knee-deep in twins and dishes," she said, laughing. "Not anymore," I replied. We talked for almost an hour. She invited me to her Tuesday book club. I said I'd be there. Later that evening, I sat at the little table in the corner of the room and wrote a letter to myself. Not a journal entry. A letter. It started with, "Dear Shannon, you did the right thing. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know how Stanley will respond when the bills bounce or the groceries stop showing up. But I do know this. I won't be stepping back into that house unless it's with my head held high and on my own terms. This isn't revenge. This is recovery. I gave them more than money. I gave them time, love, meals, diapers, sleep, and patience. And when I needed one weekend away, they treated it like betrayal. So now I'm giving something else to myself. Space. And maybe, for the first time in a long while, respect. By the end of the first week, I'd stopped counting how many times my phone buzzed. The first voicemail came 2 days after I left. Brittany's voice, clipped and sharp. "Hi, Shannon. Just calling to check in. We're a little tight on time this week. Stanley's got meetings, and I've got a thing with HR. If you want to talk about the trip and coming back, we're open to that. Okay, call me." She didn't say she missed me. Didn't ask if I was okay. I didn't call back. On the third day, she left another message. "So, just a heads up, the twins' daycare wait list is, 7 months long now. Nobody told us it was this bad. We're trying to figure things out. Let us know if you're planning to come back." That one I played twice, just to hear the worry under her voice. By Friday, the tone had shifted. "I don't get why you're doing this, Mom. You could have just helped. You know we're struggling. This isn't how family works." Funny, that's exactly what I'd been telling myself for 3 years. Stanley finally called the next night. His voice was lower, slower, almost like the son I used to know. "Hey, Mom. Just wanted to say, we didn't mean for things to get like this. Brittany's been stressed. I've been out of town too much. We were just overwhelmed. You know how hard parenting is." That was his whole message. No apology, no responsibility, just pressure dressed up as guilt. I didn't respond. Instead, I turned off my ringer and opened my notebook again. I'd started making a list, not of chores, not of things I needed to do for other people, just a simple list called Things I Forgot I Loved. The first line read, eating breakfast without someone asking for something. Then, reading the Sunday paper front to back. Talking to adults about adult things. Not being on a schedule I didn't agree to. Each day, I added 1 or 2 more. It reminded me that I used to have a life. That weekend, I went to Patty's book club. It was held in the back room of her flower shop. 10 women, all widowed or single, all over 60. No one asked me if I'd changed any diapers lately. No one asked for apple juice or threw goldfish crackers on the floor. We drank coffee, ate lemon bars, and talked about books, grandkids, and the cost of heating oil. It was simple. It was lovely. Patty pulled me aside afterward. "You look lighter," she said. I nodded. I feel like I finally set something down. Monday morning, I signed up for the local widows group at the community center. They met twice a week for lunch and light walking. Some ladies were dealing with loneliness. Others, like me, were recovering from giving too much of themselves for too long. That same day, I walked to the library and asked about using one of the study rooms. The young man at the front desk raised an eyebrow. "Starting a group?" he asked. "No," I said, "a blog." He smiled. "Even better." I'd never written anything online before. Didn't know the first thing about hashtags or followers. But I knew what it felt like to be needed for everything and appreciated for nothing. And I figured I couldn't be the only one. I called it My Boundaries, My Peace. The first post was short. I'm a 72-year-old woman who used to think love meant never saying no. I was wrong. I hit publish. Then I closed the laptop and went for a walk. It's strange how quiet the world sounds when you step out of survival mode. The air feels different. Even the way your feet hit the ground changes. For the first time in years, I sat down at the diner and ordered a full breakfast, eggs, grits, toast, bacon. Not a piece of toast scarfed down between bottle feedings. Not a reheated muffin at the kitchen sink. A full, sit-down hot meal. I didn't check the clock once. On the way back to the motel, I passed the church thrift store. They had a sign up that read, "Volunteers Welcome." I walked in and filled out the form. One of the ladies behind the counter, Ruthie, looked over my answers and grinned. "You've got neat handwriting," she said. 40 years of grocery lists and birthday cards. I told her. We both laughed. That night, my phone buzzed again. Another voicemail. Brittany this time. Her voice was strained. Stanley's boss just changed his travel schedule again. He's flying out tomorrow. I've got a virtual town hall all morning. I don't know what we're supposed to do. Mom, if there's any way you can help just for a couple days, we'd really appreciate it. I listened to it once. Then I deleted it. This wasn't a crisis. This was the sound of two people realizing that the free help they relied on had walked out the door and wasn't coming back just because things got inconvenient. I knew they didn't miss me. Not really. They missed the ease of having me. The food they didn't shop for. The clothes they didn't wash. The twins they didn't raise by themselves. That's what hurt the most. But pain has a way of teaching you things. I learned that stepping away isn't selfish. It's smart. It's sane. It's necessary. Especially when your kindness is treated like an obligation. The motel wasn't glamorous, but every time I turned the key and stepped inside, I felt calm. There were no toys on the floor. No passive-aggressive sticky notes on the fridge. No baby monitors crackling at 3 a.m. Just me and the peace I'd been begging for, but never given permission to have, until I took it for myself. It was a Thursday morning when the call came in. I'd just poured myself a cup of motel room coffee. Not the best, but it did the job, and was settling in to sort through my mail when my phone lit up. It was the local credit union, the same place where Dennis and I had banked for over 40 years. I answered out of habit. Hi, Mrs. McCann. This is Tracy from Beckford First Credit Union. I'm just calling to confirm that you requested to remove an authorized user from your Platinum account. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Yes, that's correct, I said. Remove Brittany J. McCann immediately. She paused for a second longer than usual. Then her voice lowered, just a touch. I know this isn't my place, but I thought you should be aware of something before we finalize this, she said. I leaned forward. Go on. 6 months ago, there was an attempt to initiate a home equity loan application using your name and the Linden Street property as collateral. I blinked. Excuse me? Yes, ma'am. The request was made online, but when we saw it was your name tied to a property with a different listed owner, it raised a flag. We followed protocol and denied the application. We also called the number listed to verify it wasn't fraud. The woman who answered said she was your daughter-in-law and claimed to have power of attorney. My hand tightened on the phone. She said what? She claimed to be acting with your approval, but since we never received formal documentation, the application was closed. I didn't say anything for a while. I could feel the blood draining from my face. I wanted to bring it to your attention before I closed her access. Tracy added, and I'm really sorry you're dealing with this. I thanked her and hung up. For a long time, I just sat there, staring out the window. The parking lot was half empty. A delivery truck rolled by. Life outside went on like nothing had changed. But for me, something had cracked wide open. 6 months ago, that would have been right after I helped them install the backyard fence. Brittany had hugged me after the twins ran outside for the first time, barefoot and giggling. She told me I was a blessing. She said, "You'll always have a home with us, Shannon." I remember feeling so full that day, like maybe all the sacrifice, all the helping, all the letting things slide. It was worth it. But now I knew better. That wasn't love. That wasn't family. It was convenience. It was access. I wasn't someone they loved. I was someone they used. If this line hit you in the chest, if it made you sit a little straighter or blink back tears, then do the decent thing, like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a little strength today. And if you don't, I dare you to scroll down and tell me why you're choosing silence over support. I stood up, walked over to the little dresser, and picked up the picture of Dennis I kept next to the lamp. He had his arm around me in the photo, both of us smiling, standing outside our old house in Oak Ridge. That house was long gone now. Sold when I moved to Beckford. Sold to help them. To help her. What would he have said? What would he have done? Dennis wasn't loud or showy, but he had a quiet strength about him. He never let anyone make me feel small. I remember once, years ago, someone at a family cookout made a joke about the mother-in-law who never leaves. Dennis turned and said, "She doesn't have to leave. She built the place we're standing in." I missed that kind of protection. I missed that kind of respect. I sat back down at the table and flipped open my notebook. The list of things I forgot I loved was still there, now up to 17 items. I turned the page and wrote something new. Things I won't accept anymore. Being lied to. Being used. Having my name signed without my permission. Being treated like a spare part. I set the pen down and picked up my phone again. This time, I called my lawyer. Mr. Mendez was a kind man in his late 50s. He'd handled Dennis, Will, and our house sale. He'd helped me set up some modest investments when I moved to Beckford. He answered on the third ring. "Shannon," he said, "how are you?" "I need to make an appointment." I told him. It's time I updated some things. He didn't ask questions. He just said, "Tomorrow at 10? I said I'd be there. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was sad. I wasn't. I was awake because I was finally seeing things clearly. All the signs I'd ignored. All the little things that didn't sit right. Brittany once asked me to sign a blank check because she didn't have time to run errands. I trusted her. Stanley once handed me a utility bill and said, "Hey, if you could take care of this, that'd help a lot." I paid it without question. There was the time they asked me to co-sign a small line of credit for new furniture. Just in case, Brittany had said. I'd forgotten those things. Or maybe I chose to forget them. I wanted to believe I was needed. I didn't want to believe I was being used. But now I couldn't pretend. The next morning, I walked into the credit union and closed out the joint savings account Stanley, and I opened when he was in college. The teller looked surprised. "You sure, Miss McCann?" "I'm sure." I transferred the funds into my name only, set up alerts for any activity, set new passwords, ordered a new debit card. It was all business, but it felt like taking back my name. On my way out, I stopped by the post office and filed a change of address form. No more mail to the house on Linden Street. I didn't want a single envelope with my name on it showing up there. It wasn't just about money. It wasn't just about fraud. It was about realizing that the people I thought had my back were willing to go behind it when it suited them. When I got back to the motel, I sat down at my little table, opened my laptop, and wrote my next blog post. They didn't steal my money. They stole my trust. It got 12 comments in 2 hours. Women from all over the country shared their own stories. Mothers, aunts, grandmothers, all saying the same thing. They gave, and when they stopped, they were treated like they were the problem. I wasn't alone. That gave me peace. Later that night, my phone rang again. This time, I didn't even look at the screen. I just silenced it and set it down. Whatever they had to say could wait, because now I had something more important. My dignity. The first time I showed up anywhere without the twins, people noticed. It was the church potluck, held the second Sunday of every month, always in the fellowship hall. I'd been going for years, even before Dennis passed. Usually, I had one of the boys on my hip and the other trailing behind me holding onto my sweater. But this time, I walked in alone. I carried a sweet potato casserole, still warm, wrapped in foil. I smiled and said hello, like I always did. But heads turned. People whispered, You could feel it in the way conversations slowed down when I passed. I sat down at a table near the window with Patty and her sister, Norma. They didn't ask right away, but their eyes were gentle, curious. After a few bites of salad and small talk about the weather, it came. "Where are the boys today?" Norma asked carefully. I set down my fork, took a sip of tea. "They're at home," I said, "with their parents, where they should be." They both looked surprised. "You taking a break?" Patty asked. "I moved out," I said, "last week." And just like that, the air changed. Patty's hand found mine under the table. Norma blinked. I didn't know things were like that. I nodded. I didn't either. Until they were. I didn't go into the full story at first. Just the basics. That I'd been living with Stanley and Brittany since Dennis passed. That helping turned into full-time childcare. That I paid for more than I probably should have. And that when I asked for a little time to myself, a short trip with my church group, I was told I had to choose, babysit full-time or leave. So I left. I didn't cry. I didn't blame. I just told it like it was. People sat quieter after that. Ruthie from the thrift store came by with banana pudding and said, "You always struck me as strong." Now I know it. By the end of the potluck, I'd had 6 quiet conversations like that. Women who nodded without saying much. Women who had stories of their own about ungrateful kids or giving too much and getting nothing back. The next morning, I opened Facebook. I hadn't posted much lately, just the usual church flyers or the odd birthday message. But this time, I typed out something honest. Some of you have asked why I haven't been with the twins lately. I thought it was time I told you. 3 years ago, I moved in with my son and daughter-in-law to help with their babies. What started as a short-term plan turned into full-time childcare, housework, grocery shopping, and paying bills, all without discussion or appreciation. When I asked for a weekend away, I was given a choice: watch the kids full-time or leave. So I chose peace. I'm not sharing this to start trouble. I'm sharing it because there are women out there giving everything they have and being treated like a service instead of a person. If that's you, I want you to know you're not alone. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to have a life. I hit post, closed the laptop, went on with my day. By dinner, it had over 100 comments. People I hadn't talked to in years were messaging me. Some were shocked. Others weren't. A few even thanked me. My niece in Asheville shared it and wrote, "My aunt is tougher than most men I know." The next time I stopped at the grocery store, the cashier, young girl with blue nail polish and kind eyes, said, "I read what you wrote, Mrs. McCann. My grandma went through something like that. Good on you for speaking up." Later that week, I walked into the diner and Tom, the owner, nodded toward me as he poured coffee. "Heard you've been through it," he said. I just smiled. "It's been a week." He topped off my mug and said, "Well, folks around here know your heart, and it sounds like you did the right thing." It wasn't just kind words. Something was shifting. Quietly but surely, people started asking less about where the boys were and more about how I was doing. And I began hearing things, too. Little whispers from neighbors, fellow churchgoers, people who ran into Stanley or Brittany around town. "They've been real quiet lately," someone said. "I saw Brittany at Target. She looked worn down." Stanley stopped coming by the hardware store. Guess word got around. I never asked for anyone to take sides. I didn't need a war. But the truth, once spoken, tends to settle into people's minds and take root. And it was doing just that. I started getting messages from other women in town, some I barely knew. One woman, Darlene, said, "Your story gave me the push I needed to set boundaries with my daughter. She thinks I'm just a babysitter in retirement." Another one, Beth, messaged, I moved in with my son after my husband passed. 3 years later, I was doing all the cooking and paying half the rent. I'm finally moving into a place of my own. Every message felt like a small light turning on. I never set out to ruin anyone. I didn't post that to embarrass Stanley or Brittany. I didn't name names. I didn't accuse. I just spoke the truth. But the truth has a funny way of shining when you let it breathe. And the more it shined, the clearer it became who had been taking and who had been giving. If you believe truth matters, especially the kind that costs you something, then stop scrolling. Like this story. Share it. Subscribe so this truth keeps reaching the women who need it most. If you watched all this and still don't feel moved to subscribe, go ahead and explain yourself in the comments. People started keeping their distance from Brittany. I heard she showed up late to the PDA meeting and no one saved her a seat. Stanley's coworker, one I'd met once at a company picnic, left a comment on my post that just said, "Wow, this explains a lot." I didn't feel proud, but I didn't feel guilty either. I felt seen. One night, I walked past the park and saw another grandmother playing with her granddaughter. The girl was laughing, chasing bubbles. The woman looked over at me and nodded. A look passed between us, one of understanding. Back at the motel, I sat down and wrote another blog post. This one was titled, "Respect is a two-way street." I wrote, "Being a parent doesn't mean you're entitled to your mother's time, money, or silence. And being a grandparent doesn't mean you have to raise another set of children. Love doesn't equal servitude." I clicked publish, closed the laptop, and sat in the quiet with my tea. People were starting to understand, not just what happened, but why it mattered, and I didn't have to say another word. I was sitting outside the motel with a cup of coffee, watching cars pass by when I saw Stanley's SUV pull into the parking lot. I knew it was only a matter of time. They parked crooked in front of room 12, and both doors slammed shut hard enough to make the motel sign rattle. Brittany was out first. She looked tired but angry, her hair pulled up in a messy bun and sunglasses too big for her face. Stanley followed behind, quieter, but you could tell his fuse wasn't far behind hers. I didn't stand. I just watched them come toward me. Brittany crossed her arms. "So this is where you've been?" I nodded. She didn't wait for an invitation to speak. "Do you even care that your grandkids miss you?" I took a sip of coffee. It was lukewarm by then, but I didn't flinch. Of course I care. I love those boys more than anything, but love isn't built on guilt trips. Stanley stepped forward. "We've been trying to keep things together, Mom. The daycare costs are out of control. You left without any warning." I gave more than enough. I said, I gave years. I gave my retirement. I gave my time and my peace. You just didn't see it as giving. You saw it as expected. Brittany looked around, like she was trying to make sure nobody else was watching. Then she lowered her voice and softened her tone. "I shouldn't have snapped the way I did," she said, "but we were both under a lot of stress. That weekend you planned, it just hit us at a bad time. You gave me an ultimatum," I said calmly. "Help you full-time or leave." She sighed and glanced at Stanley, then back at me. Maybe we were too harsh. But there's something else now. I stayed quiet. I knew the setup when I heard it. She looked down and placed a hand on her stomach. "I'm late. We think I might be pregnant." I didn't say anything, just watched her. Stanley nodded. "It's not confirmed yet, but she's had some symptoms. We're scared, Mom. We don't know how we're going to manage with another baby." I waited a moment, then looked Brittany in the eye. "Who's your doctor?" She blinked. "What? Your OB. Who are you seeing?" She hesitated. Dr. Mansfield, down at the Beckford Women's Center." That was all I needed. "Well," I said, "that's funny. I had lunch with Denise Mansfield 2 days ago. She's a friend from church. She never mentioned seeing you. Brittany's face turned red. Stanley looked down at the gravel. I'll tell you what, I said. If there's a real pregnancy and you need help, I'll support you getting the right medical care. But if you're standing here trying to lie your way back into free childcare, you're wasting both our time. Brittany's jaw clenched. She took a deep breath, but didn't respond. That silence said more than words. Then she switched tactics. I don't know what's gotten into you, she said, posting things on Facebook, telling people your side, like you're some kind of victim. I'm not a victim, I said. I'm just done pretending things were okay, when they weren't. You're tearing our family apart, she snapped. I stood up slowly, calm and clear. No, I said, your choices are catching up with you. That's not the same thing. Brittany folded her arms again. Her face shifted from pleading to cold. Maybe we need to get some legal advice, she said. You left your legal residence without notice. You could be liable for financial damages, maybe even family abandonment. I laughed, not loud, just one small laugh through my nose. I already spoke with my lawyer. I said, weeks ago. He's seen the paperwork, the receipts, the messages. You want to talk legal? We can talk legal. But I don't think you'll like where it ends. Stanley's face dropped. You already got a lawyer? I nodded. Like I said, I'm not doing this halfway anymore. For a second, no one said anything. Brittany looked like she was gearing up for one more attempt, but Stanley gently touched her arm. Come on, he said. We're not getting anywhere. She pulled away at first, but finally gave in. They walked back to the SUV. Brittany muttered something under her breath, but I didn't ask what it was. I didn't need to. They drove off in silence. No goodbyes. No promises to call. Just the sound of tires over gravel. I stood there for a moment, watching the road long after their car disappeared. Then I went back inside, poured out the cold coffee, and made a fresh cup. That night, I pulled out my laptop and wrote my next blog post. The price of peace is boundaries. I wrote, sometimes people who've been given too much begin to believe it's owed to them. And when you finally say no, they call it betrayal. But it's not betrayal. It's balance. If someone needs your sacrifice more than they need your well-being, it was never love, it was convenience. I posted it and closed the laptop. I didn't cry. I didn't second-guess myself. I just sat with the quiet, knowing I'd done the right thing. And I knew they finally understood something I'd known for a long time. I wasn't coming back. 3 weeks after they showed up at the motel, I signed the papers. It was a quiet morning, the kind where the sun comes through the curtains just right, and your coffee tastes exactly the way you like it. I met with Mr. Mendez at his office and updated my will. No fuss, no drama, just a simple decision that had taken me years to make. I left Stanley nothing. No inheritance, no insurance payout, no claim to anything that I had worked hard to build. Instead, I split my estate into 2 parts. Half would go to the Single Mothers Support Fund at my church, something I started talking about with Pastor Kay after she shared that 2 young moms in the congregation had been sleeping in their cars while trying to finish school. The other half would be used to create the Dennis McKen Scholarship, given each year to a graduating senior who wanted to study electrical work. Dennis was an electrician for nearly 4 decades. He'd trained apprentices, fixed old church wiring for free, and never once charged a neighbor full price. That kind of quiet generosity deserved to live on. Mr. Mendez looked at me after I signed. You sure you want to leave Stanley out completely? I nodded. He's already had more than I could afford to give. This isn't about punishment. It's about peace. He didn't ask again. That afternoon, I turned in my motel key and moved into a small rented cottage near Lake Milford. It was nothing fancy, just a one-bedroom with an open porch and an old oak tree out back. But it was mine. The quiet was real. The space felt honest. And it came with something else, a rescue dog named Banjo. Banjo was a brown mutt with floppy ears and a tail that wagged sideways. He'd been found wandering outside the post office 2 towns over. The shelter said he was about 6 years old, house-trained, and good with people. That was enough for me. We settled into our routine quickly. Morning walks, afternoon naps, evening tea while he chewed on his favorite tennis ball. He didn't ask for anything more than my company and a bowl of kibble. It felt like the healthiest relationship I'd had in years. Not long after I moved in, I wrote a blog post that went viral. I called it, How I Took My Life Back at 72. It read, I gave everything I had for years, time, money, meals, and silence. I kept waiting for appreciation that never came. I was treated like an extra set of hands instead of a human being. So I left. I moved into a motel. I cut off the money. I said no. And when people called me bitter, I smiled. Because I wasn't bitter. I was finally free. That post reached over 50,000 views in a week. Women from all over the country wrote to me. Some said they'd shared it with their daughters. Others said they printed it out and taped it to their bathroom mirror. A few said it gave them the push they needed to start over themselves. One message simply read, I thought I was the only one. Thank you. Meanwhile, back in town, things were shifting. Brittany lost her job. Word got around that she had lied to her HR department, said I was unstable, claimed I was refusing to leave her property after being cared for out of kindness. Someone in HR must have looked up my blog. The story didn't match. She was asked to resign. Nobody made a big deal of it. There was no newspaper headline or public fallout, but folks around town noticed, especially after the post office stopped delivering my mail to the house on Linden Street, especially after people stopped inviting Brittany to the preschool volunteer days. Small towns don't need loud rumors. The truth just floats around. One afternoon, Stanley showed up at the cottage. He came alone. No warning. No call. Just pulled into the gravel drive in his dusty SUV and got out holding a grocery bag and a tired expression. Banjo barked once and sat by my side. Stanley hesitated at the gate. I brought coffee, he said. I walked out to the porch, but didn't invite him in. He stood there quietly for a second, then said, I'm sorry, Mom. I really am. I didn't answer right away. I looked at him like I was seeing him for the first time in a long time. Without the excuses. Without the noise. Just the man I raised, who had lost his way somewhere along the line. I forgive you, I said. He looked surprised. But forgiveness isn't hard. I added, rebuilding trust, that's the hard part. He nodded slowly. Where do we start? I looked down at the bag in his hand. What kind of coffee? Hazelnut cream, he said. Your favorite. All right, I said. Let's start with coffee. On the porch. No talk of money. No talk of moving back. Just 2 adults having a cup together. He looked relieved. We sat on the porch and watched the sun fall over the lake. Banjo settled between us. The coffee wasn't great, but it was warm, and for once, the conversation was quiet and honest. No begging. No guilt. Just a small start. Later that night, I wrote one more post. It read, You don't need a courtroom to reclaim your peace. You don't need applause. Sometimes, all you need is the courage to walk away and the grace to let go without looking back. And sometimes, if you're lucky, the people who once took you for granted might learn how to show up again, on your terms. I signed it, Shannon S. McCann. Then I closed my laptop, scratched Banjo behind the ears, and sat under the soft glow of the porch light, finally at peace in a life I built for myself. It was a Thursday morning when Stanley called again. Not a text, not a voicemail, a real phone call. "Mom," he said, "would you be open to meeting for coffee?" I hesitated, not out of anger, but out of caution. I'd spent so many years saying yes too quickly, brushing aside my own needs in the name of family. But this time was different. "Okay," I said. "The diner. Saturday. 10 sharp. Just you." "No Brittany," he promised. "Just me." The lakeside diner hadn't changed much since Dennis, and I used to go every other Friday. Same cracked vinyl booths. Same tin napkin holders. Same waitress who'd seen too much and said too little. I got there early and picked the booth in the back, the one by the window with the chipped salt shaker. Stanley showed up on time. He looked tired but calm. A man who had been forced to sit with himself long enough to understand what he'd broken. We didn't hug, just nodded. He slid into the booth across from me and set down a small white envelope. "What's that?" I asked. He pushed it toward me. "The twins made you a card." I opened it. It was covered in crayon squiggles. Red hearts. My name spelled Nana in big crooked letters. Inside, Stanley had written, "We love you. We miss you. We're sorry." I closed the card and looked at him. "You gave more than we ever thanked you for," he said quietly. I nodded, and I kept giving. I replied, "Because I loved you, but I love me too." He looked down at his coffee. The steam rising between us seemed to fill the space that had once been held by guilt and silence. "I didn't know what we were doing to you," he said. "You didn't want to know?" I corrected. "You saw me folding towels, rocking babies, paying bills, and it never once occurred to you that I needed rest too." He didn't argue. I thought we were just surviving. He said. I sighed. "You weren't surviving, Stanley. You were coasting. On me." The waitress came by. Refills and a quick smile. Bless her. She didn't linger. We sat in silence for a bit, just sipping and watching the world outside. A man walked his dog. A couple argued in front of the pharmacy. Life doing what it always does, moving forward. "Brittany's been quiet," he said. I raised an eyebrow. "She's looking for work," he added. "Not easy around here with her reputation." I didn't comment. That part wasn't mine to fix. "I'm not asking for anything," he said. "Not money, not help, not even a clean slate. I just wanted to say, I see it now. What we did, what we lost. I appreciated that. Truly. Apologies are a start," I said, "but change is the real work." He nodded again. "So what now?" I thought about it. You keep showing up. You stop making excuses. You teach your kids what gratitude looks like, not just in words, but in action. He didn't speak, just gave a small, thoughtful nod. "And we have coffee now and then," I added, "just like this. No baggage, no expectations." He smiled. "I'd like that." We finished our coffee. No tears. No big hug. Just a mutual understanding that something was broken, but maybe not beyond repair. That's the thing about life. Sometimes it doesn't give you clean endings. Sometimes it just gives you a quiet space to begin again. If you're ready, I walked out of that diner feeling light. Not because everything had been fixed, but because I had stopped carrying what wasn't mine anymore. Banjo was waiting by the door when I got home. Tail thumping, eyes bright. I scratched behind his ears and sat on the porch, letting the breeze carry the rest of the morning away. That night, I posted one final blog for the month. It read, "When your love is treated like labor, leaving isn't cruelty. It's clarity. Sometimes walking away is the kindest thing you can do for yourself and for the people who forgot who you are. If they come back different. And if they don't, at least you're free." Now I ask you, what do you call love that asks for everything but gives you nothing in return? Let me know in the comments. And if this story made you feel something, anything, please like this video, share it with someone who might need to hear it, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that tell the truth in plain language. Because sometimes truth is the only thing that sets us free. Thank you for listening.